You don't leave loudly. You don't explain. One day, you simply stop existing where everyone is watching. From the outside, it looks sudden. From the inside, it's overdue. Social media is not entertainment first. It is an identity mirror, a system that reflects you back to yourself through numbers, reactions, and micro-approval. Over time, you stop asking, "Who am I?" You start asking, "How am I perceived?" That shift is subtle and dangerous. Psychologically, this is external regulation of self-worth. Your nervous system learns to wait for feedback before settling. Without it, something feels unfinished. At first, the mirror feels useful. It confirms you exist. It rewards expression. It gives shape to attention. Then hedonic adaptation sets in. What once felt stimulating becomes neutral. What was neutral becomes background noise. The dopamine spikes flatten into a requirement. You don't feel joy anymore. You feel maintenance. You post not to express, but to stabilize, to prevent the quiet discomfort of not being seen. This is where identity fatigue begins. Not burnout from effort, but exhaustion from constant self-monitoring. You start editing thoughts before you have them, choosing experiences based on how they'll translate, living slightly ahead of yourself, anticipating reaction. The audience is invisible, but always present. Psychologically, this creates a split, the experiencing self and the performing self. The longer that split remains unresolved, the more expensive it becomes. Attention leaks. Presence thins. Desire weakens. Deleting everything is rarely emotional. It's structural. It happens when the system stops paying for itself, when the energy you give exceeds the meaning you receive. There is often a quiet moment that precedes it. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. You open the app and feel nothing. No curiosity, no pull, just a dull recognition this no longer belongs to me. At that point, staying feels dishonest, like maintaining a version of yourself that no longer exists. So you remove the mirror. Not to disappear from others, but to stop being fragmented by them. This is why the act feels extreme in a culture that equates visibility with value. To be unseen is interpreted as failure, as retreat, as loss. But psychologically, disappearance can be a boundary, a refusal to let algorithms finish your sentences, a decision to relocate authority inward. This choice tends to attract a specific profile: high introspection, low reward dependence, and a growing intolerance for noise. These people don't hate connection, they hate distortion. They sense that being constantly observed reshapes behavior, that what watches you long enough eventually trains you. Deleting social media is not freedom yet, it's exposure. Because once the mirror is gone, something unsettling appears. Silence. No feedback loops, no micro rewards, no instant confirmation that you are acceptable. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They think deletion brings peace. It doesn't at first. It brings a vacuum where stimulation used to live, a nervous system still wired for reward, now left alone with itself. This is the rule they never post because it ends the game. Rule card. What regulates your worth eventually replaces yourself. Removing the regulator doesn't heal you, it reveals you. And what it reveals is not calm, but hunger. A dopamine system without instructions, an attachment system without signals. This is where the real process begins. Not the disappearance, but the withdrawal. In the next chapter, you enter the phase that feels like failure to most people, the dopamine void, where motivation collapses, desire goes quiet, and your brain demands the world it was promised. Few understand this stage. Fewer survive it without running back. But those who do are never the same again. The first days feel clean. Too clean. Like a room after the furniture is removed. You expect relief. What you get instead is flatness. This is the dopamine void. Not depression, not peace, a recalibration failure. Your brain was trained on frequent rewards, notifications, metrics, microsurges of anticipation. Remove the source, and the system doesn't relax. It panics. Dopamine isn't pleasure, it's pursuit. It's the signal that says, move toward this. Social media hijacks that signal by fragmenting it. Tiny rewards, endless novelty, no closure. Over time, baseline dopamine downregulates. Ordinary life feels muted, not because it is empty, but because your nervous system is overdrafted. So when you delete everything, motivation doesn't return. It collapses. You wake up and feel no urgency, no pull, no internal push to engage. This scares people. They think they've broken something. But psychologically, this is withdrawal. Clean, predictable, unforgiving. The mind starts inventing reasons to go back, just to check, just to see if anything important happened. This isn't weakness, it's conditioning. At the same time, another system destabilizes: attachment. Social platforms function as anxious attachment loops. You reach out, you wait, you receive a signal, or you don't. Each interaction trains your nervous system to monitor availability. Am I liked? Am I ignored? Am I still relevant? When the loop disappears, attachment energy has nowhere to land. That's when the silence gets loud. Phantom vibrations, the urge to open apps that aren't there, a background anxiety without an object. Your brain is searching for witnesses. Because for a long time, your emotional regulation was distributed. You didn't calm yourself alone, you used feedback. Without it, self-soothing feels unfamiliar, clumsy, inefficient. You start questioning your own experiences. Is this interesting? Does this matter? Would anyone care? There is no answer, and that's the problem. Meaning used to be confirmed externally. Now it has to be generated internally. Most people mistake this phase for emptiness. It's not. It's unstructured attention. Attention without direction feels like anxiety, especially if you're not used to owning it. This is why many return, not because social media was good, but because it was familiar. The void demands something uncomfortable: patience without reward. No streaks, no progress bars, no social proof that you're doing it right. Time slows down, minutes stretch, thoughts deepen or spiral. This is where suppressed material surfaces: unprocessed boredom, unmet desires, questions you postponed with scrolling. The nervous system begins renegotiating its thresholds. What is enough stimulation? What is meaningful effort? This recalibration feels like loss before it feels like clarity. There's a temptation to dramatize this stage, to label it a crisis. It isn't. It's a detox from synthetic significance. Here is the rule people misunderstand and therefore violate. Rule card: when dopamine collapses, do not rush to replace it. Replacing one loop with another preserves the dependency. Different interface, same structure. The void isn't asking to be filled, it's asking to be endured. Slowly, something shifts. Not motivation, discernment. You begin to notice which impulses are artificial, which desires survive without witnesses. This is the beginning of autonomy. Quiet, uncelebrated, unshareable. But there is a cost. Without constant stimulation, you also lose distraction. Loneliness sharpens. Thoughts become heavier. You start realizing how much of your social life was ambient: proximity without intimacy, awareness without contact. The dopamine void exposes this too. And now a new question replaces the old one. Not who's watching me, but who stays when I'm not visible. That question leads somewhere irreversible. Because if you don't return during the void, if you let the system reset, you enter a different psychological terrain altogether. A life without witnesses, without performance, without comparison as gravity. In the next chapter, you face the final consequence of disappearance: identity without an audience, connection without amplification, and the quiet profile of those who never come back. At some point, you stop waiting for the urge to return. Not because you're disciplined, but because the urge no longer speaks clearly. The noise is gone. What remains is uneven, raw, yours. This is life without witnesses. No metrics, no audience, no ambient confirmation that what you're doing counts. Psychologically, this is a shift from an external to an internal locus of evaluation. Your actions are no longer calibrated against reaction. They're calibrated against alignment. At first, this feels like loss. You realize how much of your motivation was borrowed, how often energy came from being seen rather than from meaning. Without visibility, some behaviors die, not because they were bad, but because they were performative. Certain opinions soften, certain ambitions shrink, certain desires evaporate entirely. This isn't regression, it's filtration. You start choosing experiences that don't translate, moments that can't be posted, thoughts that don't need witnesses to exist. Time changes texture. Days feel less dense but more coherent. Less happens, more stays. Loneliness becomes more precise. Not the diffuse ache of being surrounded and unseen, but the sharp awareness of who is actually absent. Social circles contract. Some connections dissolve quietly. They were sustained by proximity, not intention. This is where many feel exposed. No buffer, no social proof to lean on. But something else stabilizes: self-trust. Without constant comparison, internal signals regain authority. Boredom starts pointing somewhere. Interest becomes directional again. You notice which impulses survive without validation. Those are usually the ones that matter. The psychology here is subtle. When attention stops leaking outward, it reorganizes inward. Values rise that were previously drowned out. This creates a new hierarchy, not based on status, but on resonance, not on visibility, but on coherence. People who stay offline long-term share certain traits, not superiority, but selectivity. They tolerate being misunderstood. They accept social opacity. They choose depth over reach. They don't disappear because they hate people. They disappear because they no longer want to be shaped by crowds. This comes with a cost: fewer invitations, slower networks, less ambient relevance. But it also removes a pressure most never notice: the obligation to be legible. When no one is watching, you stop narrating your life. You live it. There's no climax here, no revelation, just a gradual return of agency. You begin doing things for reasons that don't compress into captions, caring about outcomes that can't be tracked. This is why many never come back, not out of principle, but because returning would feel like fragmentation. Once you experience attention without extraction, performance starts to feel like debt. The world continues without noticing your absence. That realization is humbling and freeing. You understand something most never confront. Being unseen does not erase you. It clarifies you. This is the final rule, rarely spoken because it ends the cycle. Rule card. A self that needs witnesses is never fully alone and never fully its own. Deleting social media doesn't make life better. It makes it quieter. And in that quiet, what survives is what was never performing. Not everyone should disappear. Most shouldn't. But those who do and don't return are not escaping life. They are choosing to meet it without an audience. No applause, no archive, no proof, just experience, unrecorded. And for a certain psychology, that is not loss. That is freedom.